Thanks a lot, Helena. So, good evening, everyone. So, thanks everyone for coming here today. So, officially we are launching the Dalit History Month now. So, I asked Brother Chindia to come and do the land acknowledgements.
Jai Bhim everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Welcome to you all. Jai Bhim, Jai Savitri. And this is the beginning of 2024 celebration of Dalit History Month. Before we start, we thought we'll do the land acknowledgement. So I need to read for 2 or 3 minutes. Please bear with me. Reading land acknowledgement as a caste oppressed Dalit in Kerala. The mandate of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission states that the acknowledgement of the residential schools experiences, impacts and consequences, and to promote awareness on public education of Canadians about the Indian residential school systems and impacts is the vital beginning to the process of city. The result is the 94 calls for action. result in the 94 calls for action, and among them are actionable policy recommendations that will enable the healing process of reconciliation with indigenous communities. The land acknowledgement is an essential effort to reconcile and raise awareness as an atonement for the historic injustices and violent uprooting of indigenous communities from their ancestral lands. That is why the central colonial state in Canada, settlers and the non-indigenous communities started reading the land acknowledgement statements aloud. As a caste oppressed Dalit in Canada, for a long I felt wary about the gestures, thinking whether these actions meant anything at all for the indigenous people and had any real consequences. I consciously avoided reading a statement because I was not ethically prepared. However, on December 8, 2023, at a Canadian Association of University Teachers Grievance Officers meeting, one of the colleagues with whom I worked at Ontario Confederation of University Faculty Associations asked whether I would volunteer to read land acknowledgements for the next OCOFA's Grievance Officers meeting. First, I was hesitant, but accepted to do so because of my immense respect for the colleague with whom I had worked for over 3 years. This made me think about my positionality as a Dalit academic and my relationship to the land where I live and work in Ottawa. As I learned that the Ottawa Valley belongs to Algonquin Nation and other indigenous communities and an unceded territory, I reflected on the uprooted communities and the way Dalits and Adivasis, though connected to land, were not allowed to own land, and their lives and relationship with the land is always tenuous. I wondered whether the Dalit predicament in India and South Asia is closer to the indigenous communities' experiences in Canada and North America. At face value, caste-based oppression and the settler colonial states' racial oppression and uprooting of indigenous communities look different both spatial and experiential. As a historian of the British Empire, I studied other European colonial adventures with a broader critical perspective on larger lens. I could see connections and similarities in terms of colonial domination and exploitation that made them other inferior beings under the yoke of Euro-American imperial undertakings. Indian diaspora and caste oppression and racial solidarity. As an academic striving to bring voices of caste oppressed Dalits into mainstream academic and public forums, I often struggle to make connections with indigenous communities in Canada and North America, as they have no clue about caste and caste-based oppression that condemns nearly 250 million people as subhuman untouchables and denies them basic humanity and dignity. However, historically, the untouchable oppression, dispossession, dehumanization, displacement, and destruction were similar to indigenous and racialized communities such as African Americans in North America, Murakami people in Japan, and Gypsies in Europe. The violent dispossession by the European colonial and imperial powers in collaboration with native elites and immeasurable extent to violence and erasure of their existence in histories can be related to the indigenous communities across the globe. Moreover, the racial dehumanization forced many of these communities to internalize the devaluation as the natural and future looks bleak for them. The colonial legacies are alive and haunt them as colonial capitalism bourgeois into neoliberal global capitalist networks that have common interests, divide of national and continental boundaries, that result in genocidal violence and helpless indigenous communities in the name of progressive ideologies. These developmental narratives use technologies of the state to destroy and dispossess them as it disrupts the equilibrium between nature and communities to fulfill their unsatiable greed for profit and power. We are witnessing the rise of authoritarian right-wing fascist regimes across the world. It is crucial to consider the politics and assertion of immigrants from former colonies, especially the Indian Hindu diaspora. The Indian diaspora is becoming essential to the Canadian social and political fabric. Their histories and connections to the current Hindu right government in India are necessary to understand, as most of the Indian diaspora come from the inherited caste privilege backgrounds. Historically, they have the access to English and technical education in their respective countries for centuries and money to study in North American universities to enter the labor market as white collar professionals. By disguising their caste privileges, they use racial and multicultural narratives to scale up the professional and political ladder. But they deny caste-based oppression and camouflage themselves as victims of racism. It is undeniable that all racialized people face racial discrimination at some point in their life, but that does not mean that they have the right to deny the existence of caste-based discrimination. This is the ladder on which they reached here. Many studies have shown the role of Indian diasporic organizations in North America, such as Indo-American Foundation, which denies the existence of caste-based oppression and exploitation, and advocates the recognition of caste-based discrimination. As a caste-oppressed Dalits in North America, we face the most significant challenge. Our suffering does not get recognition and not being acknowledged, even though many Dalits live in fear of stigma and exclusion, subtle and overt discrimination and prejudices in their everyday life. Precisely because of this, we congratulate and celebrate our indigenous brothers, sisters, and elders. Success in putting the central colonial state and its beneficiaries to be ethically accountable and acknowledged and make amends for the historical harm done to them. As a Dalit, I acknowledge the land as dear indigenous elders, brothers and sisters. I am grateful for the opportunity to live and thrive on your lands. As caste oppressed Dalit, whose ancestors were denied education and necessities of life.
Identities and experiences. Practice listening to others without any interruption. And finally, right behavior or foul language will not be tolerated. Those who engage in such will be asked to leave the event. And as for the overall schedule for today, we will have a few speakers followed by a period for Q&As. Then a cultural activity will take place, which will be followed by lunch. And then after lunch, we have a couple more speakers, and then once again a Q&A. We will distribute appreciation certificates and then have our closing remarks at hopefully around 3. I want to ask Vikram to come and continue.
Thank you, Elena. Jai Bhim, everyone. I would like to apologize for the delay in starting the event a little bit late, and I really appreciate your patience. My name is Vikrant, and I'm honored to stand alongside you all as we celebrate the Dalit History Month. It's a significant month for all of us, especially with the birth anniversary of Mahatma Jyothiba Phule, whom Baba Sahib considered as one of his gurus, which was just a few days ago on the 11th of April, and tomorrow, as we all know, it's 14th of April, and it's Baba Sahib's birth anniversary, also known as Ambedkar Jayanti. Now, I'm delighted to introduce our esteemed speaker, Yalini Rajguru Singh. I'm sorry if I butchered that name, apologies for that, who is highly respected within our community. Now, Yalini is a two-term Toronto District School Board Trustee Committee to Equitable and Anti-Oppressive Education. Yalini's work has had a significant impact on the community of Scarborough North, where she was raised and continues to serve. She is a passionate advocate for underprivileged communities and a recent introduction of a historic motion recognizing caste-based oppression at the TDSB was a major achievement. Yalini's motion passed, making it the first of its kind in Canada and a major step forward in Canada's caste equity movement. In addition to her work as a trustee, Yalini is also a performing artist and teacher. She uses her artistic talents to explore the intersections of identity, dance, and social justice, creating powerful and thought-provoking works that challenges stereotypes and inspire change. Yalini, please.
Thank you so much, Vikrant. I wasn't expecting that, but that's very, very kind. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to see so many familiar voices. Can't believe it's been a year. Professor Jacob, that was a beautiful, beautiful land acknowledgement. Somebody's my favorite. Sometimes we do these land acknowledgements and we do them, out of habit. But I love the intention, Professor Jagan, you had in your acknowledgement. It's important to acknowledge what our relationship is to this land, but also in that acknowledgement, what our relationship is to that oppression. And I think connecting it to Indigenous communities elsewhere is really important because it shows when we acknowledge caste oppression, we also acknowledge other forms of oppression that intersect. So when we talk about anti-Indigenous racism, anti-Black racism, when we talk about caste oppression, we're also acknowledging how it's interlinked. And when we acknowledge anti-Blackness within our communities, when we acknowledge anti-indigeneity in our communities, we're also reflecting on that relationship we have to this land, but also land elsewhere, and how we contribute to that. I remember when George Floyd was murdered, and a lot of people were talking about anti-Black racism. There was a lot of caste activists in North America that were asking, you're acknowledging anti-Black racism, but what about your own anti-Blackness that is linked and based in caste oppression? So I'm also reflecting on leaders in the caste movement like Professor Jacob, like Vijayana, and who have been in this fight for so long. And the work that we were able to do at the TDSB was possible because of leaders like you. So I think that's always important to acknowledge as well. So what a year we've had. I'm thinking of how this year in Dalit History Month has become so much more larger this year, and it continues to grow. This time last year, we came together to celebrate the motion passing at the Toronto District School Board, and where so many of you played such a crucial role in getting this motion across North America. I remember seeing the emails come in from different people in different social justice spaces, faculties, and labor movements, and I was so shocked to see how far this work had resonated with. And I think that's really important to get folks to understand the impact of caste discrimination and how it takes form in the diaspora and how long this has been an issue that people have been fighting for. So this time last year, the motion was done, and in a few weeks' time, the TDSB was getting ready to submit their letter to the Ontario Human Rights Commission. That was last year. This year, just a few months ago, we heard from the Ontario Human Rights Commission and their statement on caste discrimination. Jatin, Shivi, and Sanjay's fantastic work with FACT and at UST. And then Nina in Burlington. And I think another thing that we need to celebrate that also happened at the TDSB, which SADAN took initiative with, was the student census. So every few years at the TDSB, we do a student census to understand our demographic of students, what their income level is, what their racial backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, religion, what other type of challenges they're facing. And this past year was the first year that caste-based information was collected. So we asked students, do they identify as Dalit, do they identify as caste oppressed? And I think when we have a strategy in place, collecting demographic data is extremely important to make sure that we have data to back up that strategy. So I think that's something that we also need to celebrate because that survey went out a few months ago. And so for many centuries, Dalit and caste oppressed narratives were missing, and dominant caste groups, particularly Savarna feminists, would speak for them. But I'm so proud of everyone here, whether you shared your narratives, whether you shared your emotional labor, not just for this motion, but for the years and years of advocacy. I'm so proud of you. We often hear this, that resiliency is not something that should be celebrated. Why should someone be subjected to years and years of pain and suffering in order to have that resiliency? So in some way, I'm thinking about those in this room, especially Dalit voices, and how much pain you have been subjected to over such a useless hierarchy and power structure that you have no control over, but somehow dictates how our life will unfold. So just a couple of people that I'd like to mention: Professor Chinaya, Vijayana, Vaishali, John. Unfortunately, John's not able to join us today. His mother passed away, so our condolences are with him. Vikram, there's so many people that have been part of this journey and all that you had to endure. So today I'm really thinking about Dalit women and queer and trans Dalit voices as well, and the many more people that continue to fight and suffer alone. So my parents came to Canada as refugees, fleeing genocide and oppression of our land. So as a first generation to grow up here, you've taught me so much about my identity as someone from a caste oppressed background. My father has a food business in Toronto, and he's someone that has supported a lot of community work. He loves to do community work. But I still remember hearing comments and seeing comments on Facebook like, don't eat at this place because the owner is from a low caste. Or there was a school event that my father was a chief guest to, and one of the community members said, this person's from a low caste, they shouldn't be speaking at the event. And it always made me wonder, why does caste matter? Why should that be an indication of whether a business should be supported or whether someone is qualified or not to speak at an event? So I come from a family where social justice were regular conversations, and I guess my parents thought they were protecting me when we never really spoke about caste at home. It was actually, we were watching a South Indian movie, and there was a movie about a caste oppressed family, and that's when my father had mentioned that we're actually from the same location as well, and I think that's when I first realized. So I'm also a Bharatanatyam dancer, as Vikrant mentioned, and after university I got a chance to go to Chennai and spend a year there learning dance. So those of you who know, Bharatanatyam is an art form that was appropriated and is populated and being propagated by Brahmin dancers. But I had an opportunity to learn from a dance teacher who is a Tamil trans woman that's not from a dominant caste group. And what's really interesting is there was a hereditary dance family known as the Tanjore Quartet in Tanjore, India. And they were from a lineage of hereditary dancers where the art form of Bharatanatyam was appropriated from. So my dance teacher learned from a direct descendant, the great-great-great-grandson of that family. So the art that I perform is much different than what's being appropriated by Bharatanatyam dancers today. So as you know, Bharatanatyam is kind of being projected now as something that is orthodox and pure because that aligns with their casteist remarks. But the performance that I do still has that rawness that was performed by that group of women back in those days. And what's really beautiful is that you can actually feel the excellence of those caste-oppressed artists and the knowledge that has now been kind of taken away from it. And I share this because I always felt there was a disconnect. In Chennai, we would always hear about anti-caste movements, but in Toronto, where was the conversations around caste? So it was with my mentor. He never lets me say who it is, but it's Sudarshan Duriyappa. He's not here today, so I can say it soon. So it was with Sudarshan in 2021 that the first conversations of caste first started taking place. He was the first one I spoke to about what my caste location was, and he created a safe space where I could talk to him about it. He then encouraged me to follow the work of the Quality Labs and Thenmuri Soundarajan, and that's when I took part in the Unlearning Caste workshop in 2021. And that's when I got to properly learn about what caste looks like and what it is. And I think these learning opportunities, especially for Dalit and caste oppressed, this generation growing up on this side of the world, is really important so they can learn what it looks like and what it looks like in the diaspora. So on the last day of the workshop, I introduced myself to Thenmuri and I said, I'm a trustee and I want to do a caste motion at the TDSB. I keep hearing our staff say at the TDSB, South Asian hate. So we need to define it as caste oppression so we know exactly what it is. So she said, okay, feel free to reach out to Quality Labs and we'd be happy to support you with drafting something. So I started drafting different versions and Sudarshan was the person I would turn to. At that time, a year later in 2022, Sudarshan introduced me to Vijayana and Professor Jagam. What's really interesting is, in our first meeting with my first meeting with Professor Jagam and Vijayana, we were already meeting with our TDSB staff. Anyways, I don't know how the timing quiz worked out. So I had this draft motion about this caste question. And Vijayana and Professor Jangam were meeting with the TDSB to determine how to include caste in the student census. And I think this was such a great strategy that magically happened because in order for the strategy to work out, we needed to have data. And in order to have the data fulfill its purpose, we needed to have a strategy to talk about caste oppression. So it really worked out that way, and we were really excited. So a year later, in February 2023, the motion was submitted for the first time. And at this time, I really want to thank SADAN, who played a tremendous role in engaging with the community. So the original motion had asked for caste to be recognized in our strategic plan and to find a working group. But at the time, we had a lot of pushback from trustees because they said, where's the proof? Unfortunately, in this work, not only do caste oppressed and Dalit voices have to bear the trauma of caste, but they also have to bear the responsibility of proving that this is happening. And also, where else in Canada is there such a strategy? So SADAN's outreach played a huge role in providing the testimony and the reason why this was really important. And then the motion was amended to include a partnership with the Ontario Human Rights Commission. And so, looking at where we are now, I think there's just a few calls to action I wanted to share. So when we have, the Ontario Human Rights Commission statement, we have the student census. What's missing is, how do we increase awareness in our schools? We want to make sure that families feel safe to self-identify, which is asking a lot. We want families to be able to self-identify as Bahujan, as caste oppressed, as Dalit in the census, so that when the research team has that information, we can go forward with providing supports and resources to address caste-based discrimination. So that's asking for a lot. I'm thinking about Indigenous communities and how traumatic it can be to talk about their experiences. So asking an Indigenous family to self-identify is a lot. Similarly, caste is a very scary experience. So we have to create an environment where families feel safe, but they also feel that they're not alone and that they have this community to support them through this work. So making sure that we create a place where we can talk about caste, where families feel safe to self-identify, but also looking at how we can encourage institutions. Right now, South Asian is being categorized as one, and we know that that category on its own erases race, erases class intersections, and also caste intersections. So I think we need to continue to challenge institutions to break it down further, and so that we can really understand what individual experiences are. In our recent anti-racism report that came out a few weeks ago, South Asian was listed as one, Middle Eastern hate was listed as one, and we know that experiences of Palestinian students happening now are far different than experiences of other students in the Middle East. So I just want to close by saying I've been hearing lately from a lot of fantastic activists, Gurpreet and Shiggy I heard recently speak, and in their comments they talked about anti-Black racism, and I think that's fantastic. I think our experiences are so similar to the Black liberation movement that we need to continue to build that relationship and solidarity with Indigenous communities and with other communities so that we can really show how similar our lived experiences and our oppression is. And I also want to thank Vasudhya. Recently I heard her speak, and as an ally, it really showed how long your journey has been and just the amount of work you've done. And I think as someone that's growing up and developing my lens, I really learned from that. And there's just a lot of amazing people that I'm just blown away with. I know there's some people that have discomfort, but as a great leader once said, we must agitate, educate, and organize. So I'm excited to continue to agitate. I'm excited to educate, and I'm excited to organize, and I'm so proud of everyone. And while there's a lot of pain in this room, I hope you're also celebrating how much we've come, how much we've passed. So thank you, and all the best to SADAN. I know how active Vijay is. He's always sending so many updates constantly throughout the day. So looking forward to what this year is going to hold. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Yana, for sharing your insights on caste discrimination and your efforts towards social equality. Now, let me introduce Jatin. Just having a brief chat with Jatin earlier, he comes from an interesting geographic location in India, which I would request him to elaborate a little when he talks. So Jatin is the first generation Dalit doctoral student, an urban research fellow, and a social justice fellow at the Department of History, University of Toronto. Jatin's interests include caste, urban history, and Dalit settlements. He actively engages with and contributes to the community within and outside of the academic circles. Jatin is a co-founder of FACT, which stands for Forum of Anti-Caste Activism in Toronto, a student body which has been working for anti-caste activism in the University of Toronto since 2022. Currently, he serves on many academic, non-academic, and labor committees, including serving as Q steward. Recently, Jatin published a paper on Dalit autobiographies as historical sources. His paper titled Utilizing Dalit Autobiographies in History was also awarded the Bluestone Scholarly Honorable Mention Award. I'll request Jatin to come on the last please. Thanks.
Jai Hind, everyone. Thank you, Vikrant, for such an humbling introduction. I'd also like to start with thanking Professor Chinezani for such a powerful land acknowledgement and praying Parai, which was also very powerful, followed by Sister Yali's expansion on her anti-caste work. Thank you so much. So first of all, I would like to thank to all the SADAN family and all the anti-caste activists for providing me the opportunity to speak at this Dalit History Month event today and share this platform with you all at this young stage. As a first generation Dalit scholar from the rural peripheries of Delhi, it is no less than a moment of pride for not only me, but for my whole community. Being a student of history, I would like to highlight that though the Dalit History Month may be a recent phenomenon, but the celebrations of anti-caste activism and Dalit Adivasi Phule struggles for emancipation are not. It has a long history. The month of April has been a festival for Dalits, especially the birth anniversary of two most crucial figures in Dalit oppressed emancipation movements fall in this month, Ambedkar and Jyothiba Phule and Ambedkar. To draw upon this history, I would like to share a personal anecdote. In my childhood, we all used to celebrate the quest for equity and emancipation around the occasion of Baba Saheb's Jayanti. It used to be no less than a festival for us. I used to prepare a speech and memorize it beforehand. And there was an insistence on preparing the speech in English, despite knowing that almost no one is going to understand it. In a largely or almost fully non-English speaking or understanding audience, I used to contribute to the celebration through reciting a biography of Dr. Ambedkar and his struggles. At the end of the speech, the audience used to cheer in exultation by clapping, and some even conferred me with rewards. By the way, I also didn't myself understand the language very much back then. So all the students from the community who were also doing good studies were also honored and conferred awards. Generally, every other year, I was conferred with this huge English to Hindi dictionary, something which again emphasized on learning English, the language of power and social mobility in Indian context. This was an act to acknowledge the community's aspirations, that the younger generation also receive good education, access these educational and administrative institutions, and contribute back to the community's emancipation and make them proud. However, even then, I had never in my life thought that I would be making an international visit, do a PhD abroad, or pursue academics like Baba Saheb. From this point of context, this first generation has come a long way, among others in the community. Today, I stand in front of largely English understanding audience, with many coming from Dalit, Adivasi and Bahujan backgrounds, visited North America and are celebrating the legacies of anti-caste struggles in the quest of annihilating caste. This itself shows the long history of our celebration has and how we continue to celebrate social emancipation initiated by figures like Phule, and Ambedkar and continue to fight against caste oppression through educating, organizing, and educating. So, in that series, we gather here to celebrate the histories of anti-caste struggle. Mahatma Jyothiba Phule and Savitribai Phule both worked for women's and caste-oppressed communities' education in the 19th century Brahminical society at a time when it was completely adverse for such initiatives. Baba Sahib also urged us to get good education and then organize and struggle for our rights. However, as it has been pointed out by scholars like Professor N. Sukumar recently in South Asian context and Professor Funke Aladajevi and others in North American contexts, access to quality education has been a caste elite privilege, and even if any oppressed caste student becomes successful and enter these Brahminical spaces, they run into problems and face discrimination. As a result, we see that institutional murders happening like growing formulas even till date. Therefore, the fight against caste oppression must go on, even within these progressive educational spaces. Now, I shall focus on North American context and its anti-caste movement. In this context, I would not only credit the early generations and leaders who resisted caste discrimination, but also those who are leading the movement. Entities like Equality Lab and Themu Sundarajan have been key figures in creating awareness of caste in North America. And Equality Labs has been educating and running caste sensitization courses for a variety of audiences, including the non-caste affected and South Asian diaspora. In Canada's context, I would like to thank SADAN, without whose instrumental role this day would not have been possible. I would like to have a huge round of applause for all the members here. SADAN has been actively advocating and supporting anti-caste activism in all over Canada. Sister Yalini has been central in getting caste recognized at Toronto District School Board, and Brother Vijay and Professor Vasanthi has been protagonist in getting caste recognized as a discriminatory category within Ontario Human Rights Board. On the academic front, Professor Chinmay Ajandam and Professor Shalja Pai are key figures who have been working for creating spaces for caste-oppressed people and for discussing caste in academia's exclusionary spaces. In context of specifically University of Toronto, faculty such as Professor Ajay Rao, Malvika Kasturi, Bhavani Raman, who is also here, Francis Cody, Okas Bird, have been instrumental in working for creating a space for dialogue, raising voice against caste discrimination, and working for facilitating access, including training upcoming generations of Dalit Bahujan and anti-caste scholars. Additionally, among students, people like Divyani Sanchia, who is also again here, Akash, Ashik, and Shigi have been building up this dialogue for long. This became a ground for all the anti-caste activities in the campus that we are running. It is this amenable and supporting environment that the work of our student organization, in fact, was possible in. In the long history of the anti-caste struggle, we are just one part of it. In fact, Forum for Anti-Caste Activism in the University of Toronto emerged as an idea in December 2022. With the emergence of fascist government regime in India, the educational scenario has further deteriorated, and the space for critical discussions such as caste equity is also shrinking. Parallelly, we were seeing that in North American universities in the US, they were recognizing caste, and many US states were also moving to recognize caste discrimination. In this context, we came up with this idea that in Canada, UOP is considered the top university, and it can become the forerunner of caste recognition within academic spaces. If that goes well, all the rest of the universities in Canada are supposed to follow. This was the ambition and the initial plan with which we started. So we started with creating a momentum. We created dialogue on caste and its resistance through discussing amongst peers, holding informal discussions, screening critical documentaries like the Modi Question, all of this. So we started with very small and local steps, like becoming involved in departmental and student associations, watching for recognition of caste-based discrimination in our departmental equity committees, etc. Initially, our timelines and goals were also very different, which were very much long-term. Then we finally decided to host a formal event to launch back last November. Amid the challenges of starting, we also found a lot of support, especially from our faculty in SADAN. We gave insightful suggestions from Brother Vijay and Professor Vasanthi during our first event, which also accelerated our planning for the next steps. Meanwhile, we also knew that the university is also going to have a bargaining with the labor union. So we also wanted to use this transitory phase for our own movement's cause. Therefore, Shibi joined the bargaining committee and I joined the department's stewardship. Shibi's presence, Shibi is also present here on the table, and Ajay Rao's presence on the side of administration worked out pretty well for our cause. Shibi was able to put in the demand of acknowledging caste in workers union QP at the right moment, and the university finally had to agree. With this historic move, QP became the first labor union to recognize caste in Canada, and this came up as a first huge success and change that we as FACT were able to bring. After that, we have been working to engage with students within and beyond UOP as well. We have had teaching sessions on caste even in the other campuses like UTSC, and have started to have more focused discussions on Dalit history. FACT has engaged in discussions with academic, non-academic organizations, and is also building support and solidarity network with other oppressed groups in North American context, such as the Black Canadians, indigenous communities, and gender oppressed communities. And now, we are also trying to support and mentor students coming from the marginalized backgrounds to enter the important institutions in the world to uphold Baba Sahib's dream to get world-class education. If there is any student in your knowledge, please let us know and get in touch with us. And this is also how we plan to shape the walls of these grammatical forts and agraharas and make a dent in it. On that note, our hope is to annihilate caste and caste discrimination in educational and academic spaces and beyond, and make these spaces much more inclusionary for the upcoming Dalit Adivasi generations. Our work is just starting, and it has been possible with the help of all of you. With the support of SADAN and all Ambedkar members, we will continue our struggle for equity. Thank you very much, and Dalit History.
Thanks, Dr. All right. Thank you again for sharing your experiences. Now, before we move on to the next activity, I would like to spare a few minutes in taking any questions or comments from the audience. Think about it for a while, and if I may request Jatin and Yami just to come on the stage, please. Trust me, it won't be too long. We have lunch here. Not too sure about you guys, but I'm hungry, so I'll try to make it as quick as possible, okay? Yeah, so any comments, maybe any questions that you have, please bring it up to these folks here. Anyone? Okay. Come on there. Do we have an extra mic by any chance? No, that's okay.
I would like to ask this to Gavin. Okay, so like I'm a TDSP student right now. Yeah, I wanted to ask what strategies you use for the place to like acknowledge classism and TDSP, like what you guys exactly did. I'm so confused.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Vikrant is getting his steps into it. So you want, great to see a TDSP student all the way in Mississauga. So you wanted to know what how we did the TDSP strategy. So at the TDSP we have 22 trustees. When we bring a motion, we need to have half of the trustees to vote in support in order for a motion to then pass and then become a policy of the school board. So we have a strategy called the multi-year strategic plan, and in that plan, all forms of discrimination are listed. So our strategy is so acknowledging homophobia, transphobia, anti-black racism, anti-indigenous racism. So one time when we were talking about the plan, our director said South Asian hate. So in my head, I'm like, what is South Asian hate? Doesn't make sense. So that's when we were looking at how to create a strategy that identifies caste-based discrimination. So the original motion asked for define what caste looks like. What does caste look like in a school board? And to put together a working group of Dalit and caste oppressed voices to then create professional development for teachers and staff and students. What the issue was even though there was so much support for this motion from the community, some of the trustees felt nervous because they're like, where's the proof? Show me that this is happening. So they wanted numbers. And the other issue was there was no other institution that had a strategy similar. So some of the trustees felt nervous because also, while there was a lot of support for this work, there was also a lot of pushback. And you can imagine that the pushback came from people that wanted South Asians to look at this homogeneous group where everything is perfect and caste doesn't exist and caste is there, it doesn't happen here. So there was a lot of pushback, and I think that pushback made some of the trustees nervous. So rather than the motion fail, we had to fix the motion, amend the motion, to make it more something that they can support. So we changed the motion to then ask for a partnership with the Ontario Human Rights Commission. So that way, we could get this partnership. We asked them to then give us a framework to look at caste-based discrimination in a school, and then we just follow that. And that way, no one can get mad at us because the Ontario Human Rights Commission told us to do it. So that's why we amended. I had to amend the motion to include a partnership with the Ontario Human Rights Commission, and I was concerned because I'm like, what if it just goes there and it gets lost there? Like, what if it goes there and it takes a long time? But the main thing was to make sure this work continued versus it being in its original form of asking for a strategy and then some trustees being uncomfortable, voting it down, and then it dies there. So that's how we came up with this strategy.
Thank you. Great question as well, Sabrina, great question. And just giving a little bit of background, she's pretty new to Canada as well, so really appreciate the interest in this. Any questions? Thank you for doing this definitely.
Thank you so much for the wonderful talks from both of you. I'm Michelle from Dalits here, and I'm asking this question more as an Indian who's seen caste system from multiple levels. So we've seen KDS we do this. Can we expect more school districts to pass similar motions with our children? And I might move boards. So that's the question.
I think since the Ontario Human Rights Commission released a statement, and I think they share that services or what's the right word? Institutions covered by I need the language from a lawyer. So institutions covered by the code would now be expected to have a strategy. So I think now the question is now that the statement has been released, how are various sectors and organizations going to take up this work? And I think it also depends on the awareness around this. So I think as community building happens, as we talk about it more, I hope that the awareness will lead to it. And I think also with U of T taking up this work, I think that's a tremendous milestone and support for us to carry forward in this work.
Thank you for that. Might take another question quickly. Yeah, that's very good.
Thank you both so much for sharing your work. I had a quick question for Yalini, which is when do you think the results for the student census will be out? And that data, how you sort of plan to take it forward. And Jatin, the question for you is, I just want to hear more about FAB and their upcoming activities at the university. And how do you see yourself working with other universities also indirectly? Some sort of a pan-university fight against caste oppression.
Thank you so much for the question. So we, as I mentioned during my speech as well, currently we are planning to build up a solidarity network with all the other oppressed communities within the context of North America. So we recently had a panel discussion where faculty who works on Black Canadian women's history also joined us to speak more about how narratives of oppressed communities are mostly put on the margins, even in the academic discourses, and how those can also be important in understanding the oppressed histories. So these are sort of examples of how we are building up our network, and then we're also collaborating with other universities like Queen's Universities, students over there, and how we can renovate similar works and see similar developments happening in other universities. So we are just like sort of like on very initial stage. So we are putting these ideas, and as you mentioned, we are also planning to like help students more and more graduate students to have access to these important education institutions. These are the major, points that we have in mind. We are also like continuously discussing and moving. So as we go on, we will definitely share with others.
And so the census data is already public, but I think the number of students and all that data, I don't think it was released. I think, so the census data information is connected to the student number, so the information is confidential, but it's anonymous. So only the staff see that information. So they didn't really release that, but I think from my own perception, I would assume a lot of families see Dalit, or they see Bahujan, and they would right away feel nervous. Because I think that has always, self-identification has always been used against us. So I don't think they're aware of how this can be used in a positive way. So I think the more we speak about it, the next time the census go out, maybe we can do an awareness campaign, reiterate that it's confidential and what it's used for. And I think as more strategies happen in universities and schools, and the more conversation happens, hopefully we can, because it's trauma, right? It's coming from a place of trauma. So I hope we can, reiterate what that information is being used for. But I think as a starting point, it's fantastic that it's there. And we normalize seeing it, and also people that feel uncomfortable, it lets them see that this work is happening and it's not going anywhere. So let's see what happens. I think it happens every 3 or 4 years. So hopefully for the next one we can see the numbers grow. But one thing that the research team shared is that if you go on the TUC website and look at the student census, they have a graphic which shows the different student identities, and the larger the word is, it shows more people selected it. So actually Dalit is quite visible. So it shows that people have chosen it, but I'm unaware of how many students have chosen it.
Thank you, Dr. Yamani, for your question. I might take one last question, but that's okay. If not, we can park it and we have another question and answer towards the end. That's it, okay. Maybe one quick comment from my side, if that's okay. I was raised in Pune for most of my life back in India, so Jayanti or Baba Sahib, the celebration of Jayanti was pretty prominent, and there wasn't much of hesitation in Maharashtra so specifically. How are things from the region where you come from? Because I think things were different in different parts of India, so how was that experience? I just want to put your 2 cents in quickly on the one side.
So the mobility that generally is find is through the caste organization. So back in my place, we had Dalit History Month, which was another caste-based organization which used to mobilize on caste issues, specifically Dalit origin issues. So we used to have this massive annual celebration in April around the anniversary of Ambedkar, where there was some chief priests who were like sort of successful people from a community who were called in to inspire youth and show the progress that the kind of community that it has made. So that used to be one thing. Then children giving speeches, and then conferring of awards to those students who are doing well in their studies, and also an emphasis given on being proactive in fighting for the rights in the current, in the current scenario. So that is the major thing. Now, recently there are also like rallies to also show the presence of the intelligence within the region, because the region has also become like sort of a communal part. So that is happening right now, but it's unique and thing that it's very unique. Happens very differently in my village, where there is a local mela where there's a gathering happening and somebody is reciting the history of anti-caste.
Thank you for that. All right, let's open for lunch, and we'll be followed here with the other cultural activities and the program will go on. Thanks.
I want to express my deepest gratitude for the exceptional food created by Shopify and his team. All the dishes prepared were delicious, leaving us a raving about the flavors in every bite. Thank you, Brother Shafi, for putting a lot of effort, your heart and soul into each dish and creating a memorable experience as always. We are incredibly thankful to you, Shopify and your team. And now guys, after being recharged, I think you all will be very excited to embark on a journey to explore the rich tapestry of our brothers and sisters from Nepal. Through this performance, we aim to explore into tradition and artistic expression that defines and shapes the rich culture. Whether you are already familiar or you are eager to learn something new, we hope you all find their performances inspiring and enlightening. Please join me in welcoming Haruka for a dance performance.
रातो रातो लाली गुरस मेरो नेपालको रंगी चंगी नापे मुना हमरे हिमालको रातो रातो लाली गुरस मेरो नेपालको रंगी चंगी नापे मुना हमरे हिमालको गौरवशाली सागर माथा मेरो नेपालको गौरवशाली सागर माथा मेरो नेपालको मैं पनि झिल्के मेरी माया छिटो नेपालको कालो टोपी भडगाउँदै बिर्सिने मढल्केको एक जोडी खुकुरी हेर टलल टल्केको सारङ्गीको सोरे मिठो रे भेटेको रामजीले सीताजीलाई लियो भेटेको हे सारङ्गीको सोरे मिठो रे भेटेको रामजीले सीताजीलाई लियो भेटेको बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामिको ध्वनि गुञ्जने बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामिको ध्वनि गुञ्जने हाम्रो नेपाल देखि सबै रङ्ग भरे कालो टोपी फडगाउँदै मिल्सिने मढल्केको एक जोडी खुकुरी हेर टलल टल्केको मेची काली रगतमा मेरो साल भागेको छातीभित्र मेरो हिमाचल झल्केको म नेपाली बाबु बेटी नेपाल म नेपाली बाबु बेटी नेपाल कालो टोपी फडगाउँदै मिल्सिने मढल्केको एक जोडी खुकुरी हेर टलल टल्केको
What an exceptional performance. Guys, save some energy, more will be coming. And now we have Suraj who will be entertaining us with his song performance. So Suraj, please.
Hey everyone, it's Miss Suraj and I'm going to sing a song. I hope you enjoy it. बरसात भी आकर चली गई, बादल भी गरज कर बरस गए। बरसात भी आकर चली गई, बादल भी गरज कर बरस गए। पर उसकी एक झलक को ए हुस्न के मालिक तरस गए। तुझे लिया की हिम्मत दिखलाए मेरे सपने वाली चांद का टुकड़ा है। सोच के वो मुझसे टुकड़ा टुकड़ा रहता मेरे सपने वाली चांद का टुकड़ा रहता। Thank you. I have another song also. Yeah. Okay, do you like Hindi song? Yes. Okay. अजीब दास्तां है. Okay. अजीब दास्तां है, कहाँ शुरू कहाँ खत्म, मंजिलें हैं कौन सी, हम समझ सके ना। अजीब दास्तां है, कहाँ शुरू कहाँ खत्म, ये मंजिलें हैं कौन सी, हम समझ सके ना। के साथ Thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation. And I would like to thank you, Santos Vishwakarma. Okay.
Thank you, Suraj, for those beautiful songs. It brings memories to all, I believe. These are all-time old songs that I believe everybody knows and everybody loves. Thank you for doing so good on those songs. Thank you, Manoj BK, Haruka Lama, and Suraj Kalake. You are our brothers and sisters from Dalit community from Nepal. It was very inspiring and uplifting and entertaining performance. Your music, your stage presence, your performance were exceptional, and it's evident that you guys have put a lot of efforts in your performance. On behalf of SADAN, Dalit History Month, I'm thankful to all of you for making this event memorable. Now we have it's my pleasure to introduce it's my pleasure to introduce our next guest speaker, whom I know for a long time, Chinnaya sir. Professor Chinnaya is an associate professor in Department of History, Carleton, Ottawa University, Canada. He is also a co-founder of SADAN. He writes on social and intellectual history of Dalit and anti-caste movements in modern South Asia. His book, Dalits and Making the Modern India, published by Oxford University Press in 2017. It presents the official role of Dalits in imagination and making of modern India. His translation of Samana's Dalit text, Gabilam Pack by Guram Joshua, father of Dalit literature in Telugu, is published as Gabilam Pack, a Dalit epic by Yodha Press in 2022. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Chinnaya Dana.
Jai Bhim to you all again. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all and again celebrate Dalit History Month. But before I start making my remarks, I would like to acknowledge that one of our brothers' mother, John's mother, died, and we would like to acknowledge that. Great to be to her. And the second thing I want to mention is about what is happening in Palestine. And as caste-oppressed people, we would like to show our solidarity and concern to what is happening in Gaza, and we would like to express our gratitude for everyone for coming here, and also remember all those people who are under the various forms of oppressions. And I don't want to take much time at this time because we are running out of time, but I want to acknowledge friends, particularly our allies, and from University of Toronto, Bhavani and Malavika, Ajay and Jati, everyone, and also sister Yalini, and again from Queen's University, Shailaja and Arshita, and lots of you as allies and also fellow travelers in anti-caste movements are facilitated. But for all of your support, I might not remember everyone's name, but Southern success is precisely because of allyship we have and the friendship we have built, and because of that, it's otherwise it's a lonely journey. I was telling Bhavani here when we started this whole Southern and its activism and anti-caste speaking. We started like lonely people, but today we have so many of you, and particularly from unknown circles and unknown institutions and also organizations. Lina, for example, recently got in touch with her, And all this is strengthening the movement. And most importantly, the anti-caste movement is not the response, just Dalit responsibility. Whoever believes in human dignity and human equality, all of us have responsibility. Caste is not a Dalit problem. Caste is a problem of privileged people who created and benefited from it. And in that context, I see lots of our allies, including, Brother Vijay's neighbors, they are here, Canadians, and who are really helping us in many ways. So I want to acknowledge everyone's role, and I see this anti-caste movement not just as a Dalit exclusive movement, but as a collective vision and collective movement supported by friends from academic, social activism, and different organizations. And also particularly I want to acknowledge our CCIM friends, Canadian Council for Muslim, Indian Muslims, and they are like our backbone. In fact, when we had no one to rely on, they are the one who stood with us, both financially and also even in terms of activism. Any sort of protest we organized in Ottawa or even for that matter in Toronto, they are the one who showed up and stood with us. And it is this, in the context of what is happening in India, particularly persecution of Muslims, Dalits and Christians and Adivasis, and the kind of movement we are able to build as brothers and sisters, and also people who are victims of multiple forms of oppression. And I think this is an exemplary example, particularly Dalit Muslim Adivasi Alliance in Canada. And in fact recently I was in Seattle speaking at Associate for Asian Studies, and particularly when I told them about the kind of friendship and also alliance we have built with Canadian Council for Indian Muslims and the Dalit SADAN, and they were all surprised. In India, we are unable to build what we are doing. So in this context, I really want to acknowledge Farooq brother, Shafi brother, and everyone for their role and helping us in moving forward. And I just want to thank you all, particularly for being here. And I think this is now, given the context of 2024 elections, and it is now need of the hour for all of us to stand and protect the democratic space, because as India is becoming fascist and also the spaces are shrinking, and I think advocacy and movements from outside is very, very important. I think in the Canadian context, what they are doing is very, very relevant for what is going to happen in terms of future of Dalit politics and also anti-caste politics, and also in protecting the democratic space in India. And I want to thank you all again for coming. And again, I cannot thank you everyone by name, but you are all the strength you give to us and to build this movement. And I'm very, very grateful to every one of you for your time, energy, resource, and support. And again, Jai Bhim, and thank you all. Jai Sadhu.
Thank you so much, Chinaya sir, for your insightful speech. Your expertise and passions are always evident. We are grateful for your time and your dedication in sharing your knowledge with us, and your contribution has enriched the event. Now, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Parvati Mehmi. Friends, Parvati Mehmi is a transgender and disabled multidisciplinary artist from Brampton, Ontario. Parvati is a bipolar and a Ravidasi Dalit. Parvati explores the relationship between culture and mental health through art. Please join me in welcoming Parvati as we eagerly anticipate an enlightening thought from Parvati.
My name is Dorothy and I am a transgender and disabled bipolar activist and poet. I am a writer. I mostly write about my experiences with bipolar disorder and being here in would it be possible this is going to be a mix of poetry and talking about my own experiences and what I find as the challenges when it comes to actually talking about issues within the Dalit community, about my own mental illness and life that's so, okay, we're going to start with from poetry. Life often finds ways to melt. I remember seeing one of Maraji walking outside my window with classical music ringing through my ears. Time itself was bending and my brain became strings, weaving threads now and then into quilt rich with discordant harmonies. It was a world where dreams bled into reality, a canvas where my sponges of identity, fairness, proud skin, a mind, the depths on the edge of understanding blurred together. When I was younger, I used to have a lot of memory problems. I don't really remember much of the first 3 years of my life. This is partially because of the circumstances of my birth and of having bipolar disorder and how it affected my memory. I was having problems with dreams and them blending into reality. And this was a problem because of that I have, and because of, my family existence. I wasn't actually aware of, being Dalit. I wasn't even aware of being Punjabi for a while, or being Ravidasi. It was like slowly mentioned to me, and so I didn't know what was actually going on in school, and I did not realize racism that I was dealing with in kindergarten. I was speaking fast, and people assumed it was because I didn't know English, so it wasn't myself. Second, it wasn't myself. I was speaking English way better than them. Obviously, I didn't think any of that. When I started writing, I was writing things without writing words that there were no spaces between words. So it was just one long word for an entire paragraph. And they just assumed that I was stupid because of grammar. And this is the problem. People who are disabled in any way, people who are low caste, they're seen as inferior. And this is something that got worse and worse over time as I went through school. I got bullied by not only students, but by teachers even, or either actively, or we had students, we had teachers who just didn't pay attention and let other students bully us, and then, it's just compounded. And now we're in a government where the government is basically like the school, where they look at the people at the top and they refuse to even acknowledge the people at the bottom. And the same thing is happening in the community. We're seeing so many people who are dealing with certain traumas, and because of those traumas, they refuse to even acknowledge the traumas of the people at the bottom. And thing I wanted to talk about today was how we're going to, or at least how I think we should address this, because I noticed this when, the Breonna Taylor George Floyd stuff happened, and Black Lives Matter was talking about equity and equality. And one of the things that's already being done in the community is using punk music as a way of getting towards the youth. But you also have to get through the people who have also already dealt with the trauma. And the way I think of it is also based on the Black Lives Matter movement. Find a way to communicate how one situation is like, while not saying that it is one-to-one, saying that it is much like this situation, without actually saying it is exactly like this situation, because no situation is one-to-one. But we do have to at least address this, because if we can't address this within our community, we are not going to be able to address it within the government. And that is the biggest problem. The legislation is right now that we see in the government. We are living in Ontario, which is, the Ford government is basically being run by this man-child who has absolutely no idea what he is doing. And Justin Trudeau does not want to acknowledge that Pierre Trudeau was sent to residential school, and that is how that is similar to what is going on in the caste system, and how, they're basically taking rules and ideas from the British, which were, hand in hand with, the Romans. If any of this is going to be, fixed, we have to at least, talk about it and figure out a way to communicate this properly within our society, because, the Dalit community is not the biggest community, and a lot of us are dealing with our own trauma. I've noticed it over the past year. I am really happy for everything that we did over the past year. However, I've been noticing a lot of trauma, especially in people in the community. You can see it in their eyes. I've been talking to them. Their memory is seriously impacted because of their own trauma. It's we need to, I think it's already being done, but yes, those people who are being affected the most, they have their own paranoia, their own traumas. These people need to be supported the most, because they have to be supported while we actually get allies and really talk about these things and how trauma affects us and how it makes us a lot more paranoid. When it comes to my own disorder, I don't just have bipolar disorder. I have very serious PTSD from the way I was raised, and from the way I was treated through school, and the way I've been treated in society. And it's while it's not the same as what went on in Sri Lanka, what went on in India, I do understand it because I actively try to understand it. I won't know everything once. Nobody ever will. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't at least try to explain certain things and, let people have patience. It's not going to be easy at all. And thank you. That's pretty much what I wanted to talk about.
Associate Professor in Law, Land and Local Economics at University of Minnesota, Faculty of Law. Her work focuses on labor migration, social movements, equality law, immigration, and the Dalit and Black radical traditions. She has organized migrant workers in Canada and caste oppressed workers in India. First,
despite Vijayanagara's existence, I'm still not sure I'm the right person here to speak on this important event celebrating Dalit History Month and Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's birthday tomorrow. At the outset, I'm a privileged Savarna, and it's crucial for me to state that my presence here in Canada is on the backs of centuries, actually millennia of caste oppression, extraction, and importantly, erasure of the voices of caste oppressed people. And so it's really an honor for me to share the stage with Yali, Jatin, Chinaya, and Parvati, and all others who share such powerful stories for me. My father worked in textile mills, and my brother worked on the help of caste oppressed workers all over India. So I was fortunate to witness and take inspiration from the anti-caste movements up close. The Periyar movement in Tamil Nadu, the Ambedkar workers movement in Bombay, and now the movement by SADAN and other Dalit Adivasi activists in the diaspora. So when I moved to North America as a student, I was really surprised by how severely caste was embedded here. It was a perfect example of what Dr. Ambedkar said, that there may be political freedom from casteism here because it's not embedded in the governmental politics, but the social unfreedom is embedded. The social unfreedom is all over. So traditions and social practice that were long known to be oppressive is reclaimed here as culture. Now this, especially in the diaspora, we need to look at it from the history of migration. And broadly speaking, what we see as a history of migration is actually two movements. In the 1800s, after the abolishment of slavery, those people from caste-oppressed communities were brought to work in tens of thousands in plantation labor, as indentured labor in plantations. The condition of landlessness, uprootedness, as Brother Chinaya pointed out in his land acknowledgement, caste deprivation, untouchability, and oppression created both the coercive but as well as the push factors for that migration. The word coolie itself comes from the word for menial labor. And one of the largest contingents of indentured laborers were from the hills of Jharkhand, from the Bhil and other tribes, leading to the use of the word hill coolies for indentured labor. In the meanwhile, upper caste migration was to occupy the upper bastions of society here. But what is often missed in this historical story is the resistance and the contrast in the resistance. Thousands of indentured workers in all the colonies were engaging in massive acts of resistance against the plantation system, often in solidarity with Indonesian indentured labor and with black indentured labor. In contrast, the fight for upper caste South Asians was framed around the same time, the proximity to whiteness. This is seen in how Gandhi's political awareness started with his being appalled. Why? That he was being treated as similar to the black population in South Africa. It is been seen in the cases of Thind and Mazumdar in the United States, who were claiming to be white by law because they deemed themselves to be Aryans. Now this might seem like 100 years of old history, but this is a microcosm of what we are seeing to this day. As Savarna caste members come through skilled worker occupation, skilled worker categories, and occupy positions of privilege. And the vice versa still works. Just last week there was a report on how caste oppressed workers from India are being sent to Israel to displace Palestinians there. So these are caste oppressed people who have been uprooted, as Brother Chinaya talked about, and are now going to uproot Palestinians from Gaza by pulling them in the structure of violence. And at the same time, the people supporting this are Modi and upper caste Savarna folks in conjunction with Zionists and other forms of white supremacist factions. So the techniques used by Savarna caste members and how social structures of caste are replaced is by acting as gatekeepers. And gatekeepers is not only to positions of power, to knowledge production, as many of us in social and cultural practices. And these techniques that we see today are just as how Dr. Ambedkar described, by creating these binaries of what he called sacred and profane, of what is pure and impure, who is entitled and who is undeserving in everyday social lives. And even Western societies at large have absorbed all of this in the celebration of Hindu culture. A few days back, I heard on CBC radio the experience of Kamalji, his experience of caste oppression in Canada, in Saskatchewan. He talks about how he thought he was escaping what he called the monstrosity of caste, only to find it here. And the story of seeking a better life of freedom and liberty, only to face a monstrosity all over again, reminded me of Rohit Vemula's words when he says, I always wanted to be a writer of science, like Carl Sagan. But my birth is my fatal accident. But then he goes on to say, the value of a man was reduced to his immediate identity and nearest possibility, to a vote, to a number, to a thing. Never was a man in his position treated as a mind, as a glorious thing made up of stardust. In every field, in studies, in streets, in politics, and in dying and living. Rohit Vemula's words are of emancipatory resistance. Because what he's able to encapsulate, what his discourse is able to encapsulate, is the right to be seen as human, the right to be heard, and more importantly, the right to be glorious, like stardust. And this history is filled with stories of transnational emancipatory resistance against caste oppression, many of which is erased. The fights of indentured workers in British colonies, for example. I'm pretty sure that it is new to many people over here. Often their deaths is rarely talked about. Their resistance is rarely talked about. But what is talked about is the resistance in India by upper caste activists against indentureship. And we all know why that arose. Because they were afraid when Brahmin women, when widows began to use indentureship to escape their oppression in India. So as soon as it became an upper caste issue was when indentureship was banned in India. But resistance cannot always be erased, and that's the most important part. On the transnational stage, the resistance movement to recognize caste discrimination became center stage in the early 2000s when activists successfully got the UN Committee Against Elimination of Racial Discrimination to recognize caste. This was a huge moment. It's often called the Durban movement in caste resistance. And since then, the movement has been quite relentless. In April 2014, Dalit activists in the UK succeeded to force the British Parliament to recognize and outlaw caste discrimination, despite massive lobbying by Hindu upper caste groups and the Indian government, and the network of equality labs and other activists in the US and many others, including in Canada, that we heard from Jatan and everybody else. And because of this movement is why cases of caste discrimination have begun to arise all over. In the British Columbia Human Rights Tribunal, in the United Kingdom Labour Relations Board, cases of exploitation of temple workers in Toronto that I was a part of, in New Jersey, and of course the Cisco case in the US. But as we lawyers know, for every case that goes to court, there are hundreds, if not thousands of cases that are not being reported. And it is within this context that the role played by SADAN and other activists in the TDSB and the Ontario Human Rights Commission is so crucial. It is the stories of all of this resistance, a movement that has stretched millennia despite the efforts of Darwinism to erase and co-opt it, that is reflected in the words in this back-breaking policy on caste discrimination. So why is this caste discrimination, you might ask? Why is this different from what was pushed in the US resolution in California? So first, the OHRC, the code, applies to conduct between individuals in government and in private institutions. So it makes visible the structures of caste discrimination. And we see this in the very first line. The definition of caste here is significantly gone beyond every other definition that's been put forth in the United States or anywhere else. And why is that? Here's what it says. A caste system is a social stratification or hierarchy rooted in underlying notions of purity and pollution. And this is so critical because this is exactly how Dr. Ambedkar had always insisted on how caste operates. It makes Brahminical things sacred and acceptable and everything else is profane and dirty. And the value of people is reduced to these categories. And this is exactly what Rohit Vermula's last words were. So we see examples of that, right? These examples of purity-based stratification. Are you vegetarian? Are you non-vegetarian? What was your rank in the IIT exam? What's your parents' profession? These are all caste markers that are recognized now in the code. So are colorism, names, areas from where you are. And it is in this very definition that seeks to break the social order. And the words of SADAN and everybody else is in this policy. The second point I want to make, and this brings to what Parvati said so powerfully in their last talk, is that caste discrimination is intersectional. It's intersectional in multiple ways. First, it cannot be reduced to race or ancestry, as I just described. It's also about creed and beliefs that Brahminical forces have tried to invisibilize and which intersects with patriarchy and heteronormativity. Brother John Ramachandran, Parvati, and other queer Dalit activists have tirelessly fought for this. The things that are celebrated as glorious Hindu culture often erases the multitude of beliefs and practices of caste oppressed communities. When trans Dalit activist Grace Banu said, "My gender minority community is drowning with triple layer oppression," it is this intersectionality that she defines as caste oppression. This is exactly what Parvati was talking about in their earlier speech. That caste oppression is about intersectionality. The third point that I want to make about the code is that, and this is a legal thing about the Human Rights Code, is that intention and ignorance are not excuses. And this doesn't matter what form of discrimination, it's racial, disability-based, and so on. It's across the board. So what that means is that one cannot claim, "I did not know. I did not intend to be racist or casteist. I did not know that word was casteist. I was pure vegetarian by choice." All of this has to be evaluated based on, by law, on the impact on caste oppressed communities. And so that is what I was talking about, and how this code can be used to fight against structures. But policies are only policies, the law is only the law. But what it does is that it embeds it has a potential to embed, Dr. Ambedkar's call to educate, agitate, and organize. And that is also in the code in several places. Okay, the policy puts an obligation on institutions such as workplaces, schools, universities, unions, people providing houses, media, to educate using the voices of caste oppressed people. It puts an obligation to have a complaints mechanism that in turn provides a forum to agitate. And lastly, not only the policy itself is a symbol of the organizing by Dalit and caste oppressed people through history, it's a tool for even further organizing, and is seen in the work of Shigi and Jatin and others who have put caste discrimination in student unions, the work of SADAN to get Dalit History Month recognized, and also the coming together here on a special day. And this is the third call, to organize. Now, I want to end with the entire, I brought this introduced Dr. Ambedkar's word, but I want to end with the entirety of the paragraph from which Dr. Ambedkar's words are so famously taken, because it's also equally powerful, and often the emphasis is only on those first three words. What he says here, and given that it's his birthday tomorrow, my final words of advice to you is educate, agitate, and organize. And he continues, "For ours is a battle not of wealth or for power. It's a battle for freedom. It's a battle for the reclamation of human personality which has been suppressed and mutilated by the Hindu social system." Thank you.
So I would like to, now it is our question and answer session, so I would like to invite Nigam, all of us, yeah, was it doing Parvati Nemi. We have only 15 minutes time, so we'll try to finish it off in 15 minutes. Questions? Questions or comments? Okay.
My question is to you, Vasanyata. You mentioned all the things about the SADAN of the opposite. Do you think there is a way SADAN families can teach their kids at home? Does it happen? Will it happen? Because it happens everything at home. So do you think there is a way this can be used in the SADAN families?
I'll add to that. When we should start telling children.
Actually, I think this is a better question for Yarmi, because I think for children, school is as much as a place, and the school comes under the code. Unfortunately, the code doesn't extend to the privacy of a person's home, but the school is such a powerful space of both learning as well as unlearning. And with this code, there's now an obligation on schools, especially in areas such as Scarborough and Mississauga and Brampton, that they have to put education on the caste system. They have to put education on this accepted language, these words which they may not know to be casteist, but that they should be educated to be casteist. These practices, and they think this is part of the culture, but we should be able to explain that how this culture is made up. Like it's been made up by oppressive structures across all the sections as part of but it's in the school board. So the word is young.
I can also add that I think now school boards are putting a lot of emphasis on identity. And we heard Professor Jacob in his land acknowledgement when he was talking about indigenous communities, about indigeneity everywhere. So even when we talk about settler colonization, what's happening in Palestine, what's happening here, I think all those conversations are linked. And when we talk about caste, it's another hierarchy, another power structure that we can speak to, which is also linked to race and how that was created. Someone mentioned, I forgot which author, but they said that folks that created the racism structure were really surprised at how little resistance the caste structure had. The caste structure happened and people abide by it. There was like an obligation to follow it, and there was little resistance to it. And I think there's so much similarities between it. So when we study anti-Black racism, when we study indigenous communities and their settler colonization, it's very interlinked to casteism. And I think it's about educating and raising that awareness. So hopefully with all the work that's happening, maybe in the next 10 years, hopefully we can get there. I really think though, with having universities acknowledge it, it's a huge milestone for us, because I think a lot of folks see that once the academics acknowledge it, then it's easier for us to follow. Thank you.
I guess, what I was going to say is kind of already been said, but really it's just, like finding a way to, like when the teachers teach these things about, anti-Black racism, how, the indigenous community is, talked about in the community, usually in our native manner. It's also talk about, how this does relate to caste discrimination, or lower caste discrimination, and
వీడియో ఫోటో ఓకే నువ్వు వీడియో తీయండి నువ్వు అందులో వీడియో తీ నీకు చూపిస్తాను
Thank you so much, Dalit, you all. My question is, we have you representing
Get a chance to do it outside, like in media, like having, educational programs, like how it has been done for disability, for racism, for all of this. But it requires a lot of resources, and I think that is the main problem. It's not intention, but resources.
Yeah, so what I wanted to talk about was like that we have to like in schools when it comes to the education system, because we are in a place where we don't really allow people to talk about like in public schools, at least from what I remember, it was like we didn't really talk about like how cultural differences affect the way we think, and we have to actually like there's either like public schools where they don't talk about it at all, or like Catholic schools where they only talk about Catholicism and Christianity, and it's like no, we have to find a way to get both types of schools to talk about the cultural differences and how that affects our behavior and values, because that's usually what ends up, causing a lot of conflict, even in between other BIPOC and caste communities, lower caste communities.
I just want to add one note to this, that what we have to understand, particularly in terms of anti-caste advocacy, is that especially why Savarnas do not want to talk about caste to the children, is that it is not their interest. It is not in their interest to talk about their own privilege, how they are advantaged. And another important thing, especially in context like Canada or North America, caste privilege gives them a lot of advantage to proclaim themselves as vegetarians, they proclaim themselves as yoga practitioners. So their culture is paraded in such a way that it has a lot of capital, like a lot of access to resources, access to cultural benefits. So they don't talk about their own privilege because it is not their interest. And that's the reason why SADAN is here. Like it is our advocacy which is very important to put them in ethical problem. Like what we do with that SADAN advocacy is that it is particularly posing an important ethical problem. Savarnas and Sangis, who are basically earlier they used to claim themselves as victims of racism and claim that they are multicultural or whatever ambassadors. But now with our advocacy is that they are unable to support their own privileges. So it is in this context I think it's very important that why we have to come with one thing, advocacy. The second thing is that giving confidence to people to come forward and self-identify, feel safe that they can come and talk about their own experiences. Like for example, earlier I met someone from Kerala. He was asking me, I asked him how did you get to know? He said he saw it on Facebook and came. So it seems easier for 20 years. But the first time he came for a Dalit event in Kerala. So it's very important why we use this platform that give people confidence. And we should, that's another important thing, allyships. It is our allies who are going to help us to spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's actually an important question. It also reminds me of another issue, like whether caste is a geographically specific problem or a community specific problem. So there is also a glitch in that sort of approach, because if we only think about caste being only limited to certain communities and only limited to certain religions like Brahmin, there's also an issue with that assumption. Because although this is very widely known as Baba Sahib Ambedkar has also talked about it, that how caste disproportionately impact certain communities and in specific geographical locations. But we also need to ask, like, is it only limited?
I think I speak loud enough for everybody to hear, but that's all right. I want to ask anything on this thing you to answer. What is the role of Bahujans in the caste equity movement, given that they are both the oppressor and the oppressed at the exact same time? Of course, they can be oppressed towards Dalits and Adivasis who are being oppressed by other caste people. As Bahujan myself, I feel like I don't want to take up the space of other Dalit people, but at the same time, it's not just the work of Dalits to work towards caste equity, right? It also doesn't feel right to say that I'm just an ally, because ally is usually not a target of caste discrimination as a general. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this is a very important problem, particularly in the context of South Indian states where I come from. For example, Dravidian movement in Tamil Nadu, and one level uses Periyar as a very important symbol, but it is the same Dravidian and so-called Shudra communities who basically do a lot of artistic second classes. That's happening in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. There are lots of instances. This is where I think it's very important. Education is very important. And that's why for reading, particularly Phule, Ambedkar, Periyar, are very, very important part of political education. And it is there, I think, because of the lack of reading, BJP is able to co-opt most of the BC communities. Not just BCs, these days lots of Dalit communities. Where I come from Telangana, I remember friends who used to run, walk with guns with Naxalites. There are artists activists. And it's shocking the way this transformation has happened. And I think this is what the caste contradiction, like as Ambedkar said, the whole idea of division of labor and also the way in which the caste purity operates. And in this context, this is where reading Ambedkar, reading anti-caste clubs, and also having these discussions. That's the only way we can build a coalition of Bahujan community, which Dalits, Adivasis, and other allies, particularly people from oppressed caste, from mostly Christian communities. And I think this is what our role is. If we really want to build a larger movement, a larger revolution, and the only way we can do is a social and cultural education to education. Thank you.
I think that's all. Next program we're going to have about 7.
Caste have impacted only those, or should it be taken more broadly, and then there should be a responsibility being put on everybody to think about the larger impacts that it has on all the communities and spaces across. Thank you.
Back to Sister Yami's answer, especially like you mentioned, right? So, the identity should be put either race or faith, right? That's why we came up last year with the survey. All the survey questions in the school board sent to parents to identify with the caste identity. So it's the first time we can actually the school board meeting, right? So they put like either Dalit, Adivasi, or caste oppressed, Bahujan, whatever. So we are not asking the parents or other people to just only identify Dalit. No, we are not saying that, because Dalit community identify themselves in a different identities. We are aware of that, right? For example, if you look at Sri Lanka, they apply themselves, they identify themselves as a caste oppressed people, right? So that's what we don't want to exclude any community. So that's what we intend to do. Our identities, the question survey, and we set it outside the parents, right? So this is the first time it's happened. It's very great. That's what we are hoping that all the organizations, like
I'd also like Dr. Junaid to present the certificate to Lena Sharma Seth on behalf of the organization Mending a Chasm for the advocacy for the city of Burlington, issuing proclamations to recognize April as Dalit History Month and April 14th as Dr.
She's hiding behind it.
I'd like Vijay Poli to present the certificate to Dr. Bhavani Raman on behalf of the University of Toronto, Historical and Cultural Studies for advocating for caste equity in the academic space. I'd also like Vijay Poli to present the certificate for Hema Ganapati Kolaman, but because she's not here today, unfortunately, Bhavani is also going to be taking this for her. This award is for the University of Toronto Centre of South Asian Critical Humanities and for their caste equity advocation in the academic space. I'd like to ask Farooq Majid to present the certificate to Sailaja Krishnamurthy on behalf of Queen's University for their continuous advocacy for caste equity. I'd like to call for Pragati Alganuri to present the award to Naila Saeed and Farooq Majid and their team on behalf of the Canadian Council of Indian Muslims, who have been our ally for many years, who walked through our struggle with us.
Sister Saeed, can I call Brother Hakeem and Brother Khalid to come on stage?
I'd like to call for Shanta Kunuri to hand out the certificate to Shafi Muhammad and his team on behalf of Tamil Nadu Multicultural Association of Canada, another representative of I'd like to call for Rose Das to hand out the certificate to Jatin, Sanchia, and Shivi as a forum for anti-caste activism in Toronto, and their work at the University of Toronto in recognizing caste and gender policy. And finally, I'd like to invite Naila Saeed. I know she's not here, so if someone from CCIM could come on her behalf to present the certificate to Harshmita on behalf of Queen's Ambedkar Reading Circle for their caste equity work and including caste into the union policies.
That's okay, you can receive with behalf of her, maybe.
And she's a first-year PhD student in the Department of Education. She couldn't be here today, but thank you all for
Okay, and now I would like to ask Vijay Kohli to come for our closing statements.
Thanks everyone, I'm back again. So wonderful to see the SADAN family here, right? So last year we had it, Dalit History Month in University of Toronto, but it's every year it's going up, right? So it's wonderful to see that the movement is going up. All our allies, everybody is here. We want to say big thanks to our wonderful people, like our sincere thanks to our allies and supporters who without them, we could not have this event today. I want to give big claps to them, like University of Toronto, Canadian University, University of CCIM, Agricultural Association of Canada, and other individuals who donated and supported this event. So just I want to call our sponsors who supported, just come and give just 1 minute talk at their opinion before closing it. Just I want to call Father from CCIM. Just he can come and just I invite him to give just 1 minute because we don't have much time. We need to close it soon. Just a 1 minute talk, please.
Thank you, Brother Vijay. Jai Bhim, Jai Priya. It is a great honor to be part of SADAN. So I think from Canadian Council of Indian Muslims, and we started working with SADAN, and Brother Vijay, myself, Brother Chinaya, we all had a black hair completely. Now Brother Chinaya still has a black hair, mashallah. So, we as Muslims, we share a very common value with the Dalits. Especially the place where I am from, Tamil Nadu, most of our forefathers are Dalits who become Muslims later on. So we have we are natural partners. We we share our pain, we share our success. So this is really important for us to work together, and we almost feel as a family, you know, not just by saying it, you know, we live by that. So thanks for that. Like, you know, we always, like, you know, work with SADAN whatever way we can, because it's we are brotherly organization, and we work each other for our common goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shafiq. You guys have been supporting us for a long time and supporting us. So your support cannot be, you know, compensated with anything. Thank you very much for that. So just I want to invite Bhavani Raman from University of Toronto. Just to give just 1 minute talk, please.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's an honor for us at the University of Toronto, especially me personally, to be in this space. It's wonderful to see that this space is being built, and so I feel we've also reached a tipping point. There's been so much organizing, so much labor, so much pain, as many speakers pointed out, that got this space to where it is now, and I look forward to supporting from the university's perspective as a faculty member of the university, everything that SADAN does in an ongoing way. I just wanted to say one small thing, which is the university is part of society, and we know from the long traditions of Ambedkar activism and advocacy that the university is a place of possibility. It has consistently, in some senses, also failed that possibility, but I think it keeps that idea of possibility does remain alive, and it is kept alive by spaces like this. So thank you very much.
Our sponsor, Tamil Nadu Multicultural Association of Canada, Brother Shafiq, please.
Hello everyone. Good afternoon. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. So like Farooq said, it is just natural for a Tamil Muslim to be associated with this cause. In the last few weeks, you know, there are just a couple of thoughts. I'm not going to go on. So one episode that happened in Tamil Nadu about T.M. Krishna being awarded, and how that has, you know, ignited these talks, which would not have been transparent to us if not for the social media. What that is doing, you know, that is something, you know, in Bharati days, he was outcasted, but we didn't know what was happening inside the community. But now we get this peek, and it is so educative. I'm really glad that T.M. Krishna is actually standing up to it. The second thing, another thought, just another thought, is that I recently started reading Annihilation of Caste by Dr. Ambedkar, and that's I am 5 pages into it. That's it. But the kind of knowledge that I have got in that 5 pages, it just talks about the premise in which he has written it. It's actually not a book; it's a speech that he is supposed to have given in a conference arranged by caste Hindus that never happened. When you relate to what's happening now, you know, there is nothing new we have to discover. We have to just read him. The more we read him, the better answers we have on how to tackle this. Those are the 2 thoughts. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Brother Shafiq. Brother Shafiq also has been, you know, struggle and fight for a long time. You know, wherever we have to protest or wherever we have support, he's the one, you know, just he shows up with us always. Thank you very much. Next to our speakers, wonderful speakers who are here today, Yalini Rajapul Singham, Dr. Chennaya Jangam, Jatin, Parvati, Mihini, and Dr. Vasanti. And also we want to extend our thanks to our hosts, especially Vaishali, Pragati, Vikrant, and Alaina. So they did a wonderful job. artists, our Nepali community and artists who played excellent, the songs and dance. It made us really like, it's, as our audience, who took the time today and traveled from so far, even some people came from other cities, and especially brother Anand Bari, bad memory, Anand Bari, who came from Wasaga, Wasaga, and other people who came from other cities, too far, right? Scarborough, people came from Scarborough and other cities. Leena, yeah. So brother Chilia, who traveled from Ottawa. So these all, without you guys, there is no SADAN and there is no any movement, there is no any progress, right? So thank you very much to everyone for having this wonderful moment, and we hope that we are going to take it forward every year. We want to extend this movement to every corner of Canada and world too.